Welcome, everybody, to West of the Moon podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Garza. And today I'm very excited to bring to you one of my favorite people on the planet, straight out of California, Los Angeles, Los Feliz to be exact. The man, the myth, the legend, the one and only. Ovat.
Yes, I'm here. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I feel like I've been waiting for this moment to be able to have you on the podcast for a while.
And here we are.
Finally making it a reality. Show us Lola.
Lola, you want to get on the mic, mama?
So what's new in the hood? How's everything going? Are you surviving this pandemic?
I am thriving in this pandemic.
Good.
You know, I'm doing really well. Work
Yeah.
is great.
Do you want to tell people where you work or nah?
I work at Stage 13, and we do shows that tap into a diverse voice on both sides of the camera.
Yeah.
And we have some stuff out in the world. You should check it out. You can go to stage13.com and check out what we do.
I feel like you're always posting about like some cool shows that they're doing. Like it's always a cool project.
Yeah, right now you can actually see Two Sentence Horror Stories on CW, and next week we're going to have season 2 of Two Sentence Horror Stories on Netflix. So It's really exciting times, and it's a psychological horror television show that taps into social justice. Really worth checking out.
You and I have both been a fan of horror for a long time. So I feel like if I'm hearing this from you, then it's definitely going to be like a good,
Yes.
a good recommendation for horror.
How are you?
I'm good. Just, trying to stay alive. We just had this crazy ass freeze. I myself was going stir crazy because I didn't leave anywhere. I was in my place like it was almost like a week long.
That sounds like a horror movie right there.
It was awful. So I wanted to get you on the podcast because I feel like you and I have this first of all, I should say, you and I have been friends for...
We're going on 15. Yeah, going on 15 years.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. And so I've always had this fascination with our friendship because you're a Gemini and I'm a Scorpio. And if we believe in all that stuff, which kind of I partly do, I feel like, for some reason we just have this, I have a Gemini moon in my chart. So my emotions are ruled by Gemini. They say the Gemini has the 2 twins, right? And you never know which twin you're talking to.
That's what we've heard.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating. I think that, the thought processes from the stereotypical Gemini, just this very mercurial energy, just sort of just you get the brain going. Hanging out with Güstavo gets the brain going, gets the energy going, gets the mischievous side of me to come out. And I love that. So I feel like we kind of met on that note. We met in an art show, or maybe a couple weeks later, we worked together at the Dark Magic show.
Yes.
So I feel like we've always had this inclination, this magnetism towards the dark side, or just this dark energy in a way, not in an evil way, but kind of in an evil way sometimes, but more death and that just very macabre and sort of taboo and mysterious.
Hey, you and I see well in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've enjoyed over the years having just these long ass conversations about everything. It's very enjoyable, very mental. I'm so glad to have you in here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I feel the same way because I also feel that your energy is very receptive to mine and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I feel that when we're walking through the earth, we are vibing at a certain level, but when we get together, that vibration goes up.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. So funny. We can come up with music videos on the fly, or we can dress like the dead. So we've had many, many fun times, many memories that I will take to the grave. And since I'm talking about the grave, today I want to talk about death and the macabre and just sort of the other side and ideas.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're both sort of drawn to that.
I've been obsessed with death since I was born.
Yeah.
Right? It's like every day I get closer to death.
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
this is a subject matter that I enjoy talking about.
Like that saying goes, get busy living or get busy dying.
Right. And it's an honor because, you're the love of my life and you're the
We love
love
you.
of my death. I love you with all my skull. Ah.
I love that. Where did your fascination with death begin? And then I'll tell you mine.
I feel that my fascination with death begins with my upbringing, right? This Mexican culture
Mm-hmm.
that anchors death in this Dia de los Muertos,
Mm-hmm.
but also the religious history and tapestry that Mexico has.
Yes.
Every culture has their own interpretation of death. The Mexican culture, along with the religious culture, right? You have this indigenous mixture with European religion that creates this hybrid of interpretation of death. So that's where my first reference of death comes from. It's really interesting because I never really looked at other interpretations of death until I was an adult.
And it's like celebrated, like you said, like with the Dia de los Muertos, and
Mm-hmm.
in other cultures, it's kind of like, well, that's it. You're going to heaven or you're going to hell. Or some people, don't think that it's like anything happens after that. But my story is kind of funny. I mean, it's always just been one of those things. It's kind of like, oh shoot, they're not like that person's gone, and I guess they're going to heaven. I mean, that's what my parents are telling me. But where are they really going? Like,
Right.
what happens to them? And my brother used to watch wrestling when I was a kid, and there was this I guess what character or whatever they call him, like his persona was called the Undertaker, and he was my favorite. And I was a girl, so I didn't really watch too much wrestling. But anytime he came on, like just the music and the scariness, like just something about it, I was like, dang, I like this guy.
And he's from Texas too.
No way, I had no
Yeah, he
idea.
lives in Austin and he just retired. So The Undertaker is a great reference of death.
So he was my favorite, and I was so obsessed with him for a while. And I thought I wanted to be a funeral director. I remember telling my dad and telling my parents, like, I want to be a funeral director, because I was thinking, how can I be him, right? My dad would always be like, you're always Miss Doom and Gloom. And I'm like, whatever, Dad. So, so I think that's kind of where it started. Just as a kid, it's just something that's very mysterious and just attractive. You're like, what? What does it mean? Like. And as I watched like shows, like Tim Burton stuff, like Beetlejuice. Man, when I saw Beetlejuice, I was like, I
Oh,
just watched it again recently, and I'm like, I love, I love how they talk about death in that movie, and just how it's like they're just normal people living their life. Like, how do we not know that that happens now? That we're not living with people, that used to be on this planet alongside them. We just can't see them.
of the recently deceased.
It's just so fascinating, and just it's not it's interesting to think what could be on the other side if there is another side. And thinking like with the Egyptians, I mean, they revered death, they prepared for it before dying, and it was like, a ritual kind of thing.
Considered a great honor.
So yeah, so I think, for me, I've just been drawn to that side, and anything having to do with that, with the macabre, I like to say, just wondering what else is out there. Have you seen that show, Surviving Death?
No, I haven't.
It's interesting. They talk about like reincarnation. They talk about mediumship. There were some that they talked about, like signs from beyond, and like, what else did they talk about? Oh, and, like near death experiences.
I have to check that show out. That sounds fun. My grandfather died last month,
Mm.
and that was pretty intense. But not the death itself, but more the anticipation of death.
Were you
Right.
guys expecting it?
Well, it was getting closer, right? It was like, and he ended up dying of COVID. Since I was a little boy, I always dreaded the fact that my grandfather would die. I always felt compelled that I would be there at his deathbed, holding his hand, like in Big Fish.
Oh, I love that movie. Such a great film.
But that did not happen. And I've been so removed from my family for so long that the impact of the death, I have to endure it alone.
Yeah,
I don't get to
it's
mourn
hard.
with family physically next to me. Even though I
Yeah.
can talk to other family members over the phone and like really touch base, it's not the same as being able to feel the energy of another human being next to you that
Physically touch them and
exactly that is suffering to death. You know, in the last 10 years, I lost my sister, my grandmother, and then a bunch of friends. I've always been told that it takes a village to raise a child.
yeah.
But what happens to that child when the child grows up and members of his village begin to cross over to the other side, and you're standing around looking around at these voids, right? And you first have to acknowledge these voids and this absence, and then yet question yourself as to what's your next role in this village, right?
Yeah.
You have younger family members, and it becomes your duty to participate in that raising of another child, right? And it really puts into perspective the kind of life you want to live.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it adds this sense of urgency, like, hey, time is precious. If you had the privilege to waste time and just be like, yeah, I'm just wasting time because I want to, that's
Yeah.
great, right? But if you're wasting time figuring out life and not knowing what you want, that's another type of waste. I feel that death in life is much harder than a physical death, right?
Yes.
When you have this, where you have relationships with people of all kinds, platonic, romantic, sexual, creative, and then those friendships end, that's another form of death, right? That sense of loss. It could be an inward death of your own feelings and mind, and then, but it could also lead to new beginnings.
Rebirths.
Exactly.
Shedding skin.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It's like when it's in that goo phase, when it's in the cocoon, it's like, holy, it's crazy that it knows what to do. You know, life is crazy, you know, how intelligent like nature is and stuff like that. I feel like in regards to death, it's like I had one of my great aunts helped to raise me when I was a kid, and she was the closest person to me. Like I still dream of her. I still, you know, she's a huge energy in my life even now. Like it's really crazy. And I think about that often, and I think like that to me is the point of living, I think, is like connecting with in a meaningful way with people, because it's like so crazy how much of an impact the love that she gave me has. Like there are times when I just think when I'm going through a tough time or something and I think about her or dream about her, or some kind of like spiritual thing happens where I feel like I'm getting a sign from her or something. But you know, focusing on the love and being the love and giving that to people, and you know, just think of the way I think of it is like, for example, with your grandfather, it's like that impact that he had in your life, like you can do the same thing for somebody else, like while you're alive, and you probably already are and don't even know it, you know?
Right. That's what it had me thinking of, like, what's my new role in this village where people are dying, and you know, you gotta take your knowledge and pass it along.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I keep seeing these things where they're like, oh, you can turn into a tree or whatever.
Oh yeah, I'm cool with that. Bury me and like I'll feed the plants and the trees, and then those trees can produce fruit, and then people can eat them, and then I can be in people's bodies.
Exactly. Like just continuing the nutrients. What kind of tree would you be?
I like to be an orange tree.
Dang, that's pretty good. I would be a pecan tree.
Ooh.
I love pecans. And you're just living, moving on. Your energy is just changing shape.
Exactly.
What do you think about death and like death rituals, since we're talking about how we would want to go funeral wise?
Well, you know, I was watching the show Vikings, and you know the Vikings were pagans, right? And they had a different ritual of death. And then you mentioned the Egyptians. Egyptians
Yeah.
had different rituals of death, right? And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine last night. It's like these rituals of death are, in my belief, the psychological interpretations of how to process loss. And you lose someone you love. How do you psychologically process that? My entire life, when it came to death, I always thought like there was closure, like, oh, there's closure, let's get closure on this, you know.
Yeah.
But I've adopted a different practice in the sense of closure for me doesn't exist. Because when you lose someone you love, when you lose someone that you really care for, you never stop thinking about them.
Right.
You never stop to feel the absence of them. That void is always there. You really don't have closure when it comes to death. When you have that missing person, that void will be with you forever, for the rest of your life.
For
Therefore,
sure.
I don't believe in closure. I lost my sister years ago, and I still feel her absence, but
Yeah.
I also still feel her presence
Mm-hmm.
and the memories that I have in my mind. And to go back to the rituals, I feel that death rituals are a cultural agreement of what a tribe or a clan agrees in their belief system. Where we live now, it's the current interpretation of religious beliefs, which it's like, oh, we're going
Mm-hmm.
to bury them in the earth. Oh, we're going to cremate them. And then we're going to take those ashes and pollute our environment with
Yeah.
dead human cells that have been burnt. And we're going to throw them in the ocean. And then all these fish are going to eat it. And you're just contaminating the environment.
Yeah.
But I feel that death, the interpretation of that death and the processes can be beautiful, especially when you have artistic expressions in death. And it's like, look at all the artwork that has been created over the centuries just on
Oh my
death,
gosh. Yeah.
right? You have
It's
this
provocative.
exactly from Ingmar Bergman in the Seventh Seal, creating like death as a figure with a cloak and a sicko, and to an angel of death in like Guillermo del Toro movies. So it's like,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of death, right? My particular one that I love the most is, put like some coins on my eyes and tell
I like
Quran,
that.
tell Quran to take me to the other side on the boat.
Is that his name? The guy who takes people across the river?
One of his names, like
River of Souls.
I think that might be the Greek version. But
Okay.
one of the other early interpretations of death and the afterlife that I first experienced was Dante, right? When Dante
Dante's
started,
Inferno.
yes, when he started creating, uh, like the Divine Comedy, like of like all his work, like what he was able to do in death, right? Imagine this: all these clans in Italy are living and dying, and they're all speaking different languages, so they all have different cultural beliefs. But through poetry, he was able to unify the Italian language through his poetry. So all these clans that spoke different dialects of Italian ended up adopting what became a unified version of the Italian language. And if he never thought about death, like that probably would have happened later, but not in the same way. So his poems about death really not only unified a country, but it created a language.
Wow. Did not know that about that guy. That's interesting.
The rituals of death are go beyond like going to funerals and having
Hmm.
memorial services. Like I feel every day I pay honor to my sister, my grandmother, my grandfather by creating rituals of artistic expression.
Yes. And I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes I think though, like, I mean, as far as me, I was raised Catholic and like, I think it can be, like you said, kind of wasteful to put them in like a coffin and then it costs all this money. It's like,
Right.
really like you're missing the physicality of the person. Like, and I think of that now and I think of human touch as like so important and so like because that's what we miss the most. I think we miss their physicality, their presence. Their energy isn't really gone or dead, and their memories for sure not gone or dead. It's just their physical person.
Right.
I don't know, like hugging people, touching people, being around people, like human interaction. It's like so vital to human existence. And sometimes feel like people can forget that, like going through their everyday mundane life, especially now with this pandemic and we're having to be socially distanced and all that. It's like where I need some electricity. I need some human connection.
Right. And if you go back to the reason, like, if you take exactly what you just said and apply it to our relationship, right?
Hmm.
This pandemic really affects our sensuality.
Yep.
And when I say sensuality, I'm not talking in a sexual way. I'm talking about the real
Right.
sense of the word, the sensuality
Senses.
of all your
Yeah.
senses, right? Taste, all of them, right? All your five senses. When you lose a person in your life, that your senses will never experience them again in the physical world. And I
Mhm.
feel like death rituals were invented to curve the ability to process and adjust to death, to loss,
For the living.
for the living,
Yeah.
right? Because death rituals are never really for the dead,
Right.
they're for the living. When whatever you believe, I mean, they're not seeing what you're doing, they're dead.
It's just to appease ourselves. I mean, you never know. They could be seeing what we're doing.
We choose to believe that they're seeing that they could see what we're doing to retain a connection to them.
And in a way, I feel like it could be necessary to do that. Just, some people need that. Some people
Right,
need,
because if not, we will go mad.
yeah, we don't have that human connection or that physical human connection. So it's like, that's our connection. That's what we have now.
Absolutely.
Way they still live on just in our mind, in our pineal glands.
I tend to lean towards artistic expression. Let's take Goya, for example. That guy existed like 500 years ago, and his interpretation of death in his black paintings are incredible, right? And it gives us a sense of what this person was feeling and thinking
Mm-hmm.
across the centuries, right? So imagine you create works that can. Imagine you're this child in this village being raised by a village, people start dying, and you start to figure out how you can reckon with that death, and you start creating artistic expressions, and then you die, and then centuries pass, and someone that never met you will look at your work and have their own interpretation of what you were feeling about death, and then they take that, and it just becomes like this long like game of telephone, but in terms of death. Imagine like Beethoven and Mozart and all these composers that had these sounds in their brains, and they just started putting them down on paper, and then they die, but yet their work lives on. So in a way they become immortal, but their physical body is gone.
I love that and that idea of living on, and just in a way you are living on, even though at some point your name gets forgotten, maybe your specific artwork or whatever, but someone else has created something off of that. So it's kind of like in a way you still live on.
Right. Not everybody could be Achilles, right? He was one of the greatest warriors in history, and that was one of the greatest wars in history. But then, like, he ended up getting like shot in his Achilles and that tendon,
Yes.
and he died. But he was so famous that he lived on through the centuries in the Odyssey.
He's like, that's why no one will remember your name in the movie.
And that's my biggest fear, to be forgotten, right? Like,
Yeah.
imagine they remember Valerie Garza in 1,000 years.
Hopefully somebody will find us on YouTube.
We're always creative in how we honor the dead, right? But what if we honor the living as well,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's when you get birthday parties and quinceañeras and all these like ceremonies. Yeah, we're honoring the living. Death and life go hand in hand.
Imparting our wisdom or our creative works. And it's like, I love what you said to me one time when I think I'd sent you some poetry or something, and you were like, I may even made a little video of what you said to me because you said something like, once you create something, it's like it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the people that interpret it and what it means to them.
Exactly.
And I think that's just, it's perfect and it's so wise and so true and so accurate. It's like we want to hold on to our gifts or our secrets or our, for me, my poetry was embarrassing to share because it's so, personal and intimate. But at the same time, like there are other people out there who've gone through similar who could say, like you were talking about Goya, it's like it can be relatable and help people. And so I think in that way, you and I, as creative people, art, creative types, artists, whatever you want to call it, it's like I think it's our duty to do those
Right.
things.
And then there's another form of death that many people don't ever talk about, right? Is fear. There's a painting Goya did called Saturn Eating His Son.
I love that one with the,
And the reason he eats his son is because he's afraid that the son is going to grow up and kill him.
that's intense.
When you operate from a place of fear, you're operating from a place of loss,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't want to lose anything. You don't want to lose what you have. You don't want any threats. It makes you think of all these great artists, and not even and not the great artists, just people, right? What people can create in life, but what do people create when they know they're going to die?
Yeah.
Fear is a big form of death, right? And I heard an acronym of fear is false evidence appearing real.
Love that. I've heard that. Yeah.
That inward death, I feel, is one of the greatest experiences that is necessary to grow.
Sometimes you have to die several times, to keep living. And just getting rid of the old versions of you.
Exactly, and I feel like that death is can also be artistic, can also have its own rituals.
Mm-hmm.
A ritual of like, oh my goodness, I don't live in the same city that I lived last year. I'm not behaving the same way. I'm doing things better. I'm shedding an old version of me, and that version of me is dead now. And I'm having these rituals where if they can advance a better version of me by seeking out spiritual enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
through church or a non-church or whatever,
Yeah.
I feel that those death rituals are merited in growth.
And maybe it should be more common.
When you lose someone that you love and you stop living in a way that you become so incapacitated is another form of death,
Yeah.
right? So I feel that death goes beyond the physical dead flower,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And the rituals are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think of when you talked about the death march, I thought of like the funerals that they have in New Orleans with the parades.
If I die in this country, I want to die in New Orleans. But, I was so impacted by the death of Jim Morrison, and he died in Paris. And for a long time, I was like, I want to die in Paris and put me in Père Lachaise, please. Thank you. You know? And then I got to go to Père Lachaise one day and see Jim Morrison's grave. And I saw his grave twice in my life. So it was really, really like, yes, let's do it. Take me to Paris. And, so that my death can bring people together, even if it's around the tombstone. Exactly.
This sense of humor about death. I feel like you kind of have to have it.
Right. Because, comic relief alleviates the pressure and sadness of death.
Yeah.
And that's why when you and I sit around at Happy House and we start writing music together, and
Tell people what Happy House is.
Happy House is our place in Los Feliz. And we call it Happy House because we lived in Los Feliz, which in Spanish means happy. It was one of those moments in time where we lived together in an apartment creating these life rituals,
Mm-hmm. Life rituals, painting.
advancing our relationship through artistic endeavors, right? And we created a lot. And every time you come visit, we continue creating.
That's what I love probably the most about our relationship. It's like, I mean, I to this day I love painting and I don't consider myself an artiste, but I enjoyed it. Such a good mental release and like I definitely feel like I credit that to you because I mean, I remember being in the happy house with no furniture when we first moved in, just barefoot on the wooden floors painting.
Exactly.
That's all we had. We didn't even have a TV, nothing.
When you take a look at those practices and you put them up in relation to death, it's like if we have the imagination to create these death rituals and artistic endeavors, we have the same power to do it in life.
And it's like you said earlier, it's just, I mean, when you think of death, immediately you think of living and like, how am I living? What can I do to, procure the most out of this life? for me, it's like energy. Like I want to be around people that have good energy or that help me be more creative
Right.
or that, don't impose their will upon me. Like I want to live free.
The ones that stimulate all your senses.
Yeah, exactly. Make it a sensual life. And it's like thinking that way is so rare. Like so many people are like, I need to get to work. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's like, yes, we all have to do that, but make some time because it's temporary.
Right. And it takes almost a pandemic to create a recalibration and reset your priorities to be like, hey, I want to be around people that love me. I want to experience great things. I don't want to waste time on people that don't care about me. I don't want to waste time and energy on things that don't matter. It's a pandemic. Once you start losing your senses, it's like people stopped being able to smell. People stop being able to taste. And in a way, that's a form of dying. It's just like, so it can be scary.
Qué miedo.
Qué miedo, no puedo olerte, apestas.
But it's like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I feel like that definitely forced people to look at themselves, their lives, their relationships, like what is serving me, what is, and I hate to say that I saw this meme, like of all things, like it was like, did you really walk away from something that didn't serve you, or was it just that you didn't learn conflict resolution? And I was like, oh, shit. Like as a Scorpio
Exactly.
who's used to just cutting people out of my life that I don't want in my life anymore, I'm like, I need to be more tolerant, like there's so many different types of people out there. And definitely this is something I'm working on in my older age. I'm like, I think that everybody has something to offer, even if they're an enemy, even if they, especially if they're an enemy. It's like, you learn to protect yourself and
Right.
also just to be better in general.
I do feel that when you have a sense of loss, what's worse, the actual loss or not being able to resolve your feelings and emotional manage what you're feeling towards that loss?
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like that's when a lot of these rituals got invented. Oh my god! Imagine being a freaking caveman and your cave woman dies. What are you gonna do? I don't know. I guess I'll just burn her body and offer her ashes to the gods so that the sun could come up tomorrow. I guess that's a ritual now. A million years go by and now you're like, hey, we're gonna put you in this box and put you in the earth, right?
So worms can eat you.
So
Cycle of
worms can eat
life.
you, and but really we're just making all this money on real estate because everyone's gonna die. So hey, guess what? You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. I'm gonna sell you a plot of land so you can
For
bury
fifteen thousand
yourself,
dollars
right?
or more.
And I'm gonna sell you, in addition to the land, I'm gonna sell you the box. So, and you're gonna pay for it while you're alive,
It's
right?
crazy. It's
So,
honestly crazy. It's like so nuts. Like I just often think of that and I think, how do people still do this?
right.
Like,
Like I'm totally down. Like I died, just put me in a sack and
yeah,
put some fertilizer and some seeds, and then a tree comes out.
yeah, that's what I want.
The whole
That's what I want.
ashes things, I could see that being efficient, right?
Yeah.
I could see that being like, yo, we're gonna can't afford a piece of land in a box. It's okay. We have some flames.
Burn your
Yeah,
ass.
exactly. But it's like, hey, just give us back to the earth without the box. Just put me in a bag.
Put me in some seeds.
Exactly.
Let me GTFOH. Death. It's just so crazy to think about. But I, for one, feel like I just want to make the most of my life. And just especially now, after all this crap, I'm just like, I want to invest into the meaningful relationships I have and just focus on that because
Right.
you learn also how different you can be from other people and what your values are versus the next person. And I feel like that's what makes people migrate towards each other.
Right.
And that's important in my focus from here till the rest of the time I'm on the planet.
If I learned anything from death of my family members and my friends,
Hmm.
both natural deaths and unnatural deaths, is that in life, you have a choice. You can choose to have an inward death and not participate in life and just sit in a corner and be sad,
Hmm.
or pursue the pleasures and treasures of your heart.
Indulge.
And indulge. And some of that could be traveling around the world and
Yeah.
connecting with other humans, right? And living is the opposite of death. So if, while you're still alive, live the best way you can and have a well-examined life.
I have this thing on my Facebook, quote I found, and it says like, I have to pull it up because I don't even know what it is now.
That's why in the song that I wrote for you the last time you were here, it's like,
Which one? The
hasta la,
music video we made?
yes, hasta la muerte chingao. Like, that's the conviction I have for you. I will love you to the day I die.
That's how I feel.
You know, and whatever work, whatever artistic work we produce together will just be evidence of our love
The
for
proof.
each other. The proof will be evidence of our time together and the love we had for each other. That hopefully, when
Inspire others.
inspire others. Yes, yes, yes.
Remember that you showed me those people on Instagram that were like, they remind me of me and you.
Oh yeah, the vegan kids.
That's funny. So it's like there's always like that generation of people that are doing that. And it's like maybe they'll see our stuff and just be encouraged to flourish.
Exactly.
This quote says, "We are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us."
Wow. I love
I don't know
that.
this. Yeah, I love it. I mean, if you're not living your life like that, what the fuck are you doing?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You're welcome.
Kind
Thank
of
you for having
a
me.
macabre topic, but I just love exploring this idea with you.
But is it really a macabre topic? Or has it just been assigned a macabre label by people who weren't able to process and adjust and resolve this conflict, right? Is it macabre because it's become a form of entertainment in the works of creativity, right? Or is it macabre because there's true pain in the loss of loved ones? Or all of the above?
All of the above.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Venado. I cannot
welcome.
wait to share this with my friends and also share our other documentary that you've been working on for a while,
Oh, yes.
13 Years to Palm Springs,
Exactly.
so they can know our real relationship.
We're so in love with each other. We're just going to like, boom.
But the beauty of our relationship is that we both know we're actually really just in love with ourselves.
Exactly. That's why I said we're in love with each
and
other.
we rub off on each other.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining me on West of the Moon podcast. I'm so grateful and so thankful that you were able to make some time, carve some time in your busy day to come on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and an honor. Appreciate it. I look forward to it.
Yes. Look forward to many more projects together in the future.
Absolutely. I love you.
Love you.
Bueno, bye.
Bueno, bye.